My questions today to you are going to be basically about the fiscal crisis that took place during the early 70s and late
Okay.
70s as well.
Okay.
Um, One thing we found out throughout our research was that the CUNY system stopped getting funding by the local government. How did this affect CUNY during that time?
Well, I can speak from personal experience at Brooklyn College. When I started at Brooklyn College in the early 1970s, there were 36,000 students on the Brooklyn College campus, and all of the green areas that you see now up behind the library and so forth, there were temporary classroom buildings that had been put up. Basically, when the fiscal crisis hit, CUNY CUNY stopped the free tuition policy, and that cut out thousands of students. That left thousands of students without any place to go, and in only a matter of years, the enrollments at Brooklyn College dropped like a stone. Um, not as far, not to the level that they are now at, but you could feel the decline in student enrollment as a result of that.
How would you say that the students who couldn't afford to go to college because CUNY had a price tag to it now, what were like the options for these kids once that happened?
I don't know that anybody knows for sure. I mean, people who decide to drop out of college aren't usually followed by the institution that they drop out from, so we often don't know what happens to them. But I suspect that they went back into the workforce, and probably by now, they got jobs, that didn't require a college education. I can remember a few students who were, I think, who had a really promising future who couldn't continue their college as a result of that.
Wow. So, like at that time, the economy was really bad, and like there was a lack of jobs as well. Do you think like these kids actually got a job after they left college, or did they have to live off of welfare
I don't know. I'd
benefits?
be really interested to know the answer to that.
Okay.
I'd be interested to know whether they even stayed in New York.
Okay.
Um, I've run into students from Brooklyn College at alumni meetings all over the United States, and I keep running into people that I had back in the '70s or the '80s, and I don't know whether they did what people do when they can't find work in their own hometown. They pack up and move someplace else.
Uh-huh.
I think it'd be really interesting to find an answer to that, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly like the answers like we're looking for. So, um, yeah, all right. What lasting effects like what effects did it have on the CUNY system that can still be seen today, right now?
Well, we've never recovered the numbers
Oh.
of students that CUNY had back when open enrollment and open admission were in place. So the institution is a lot smaller. Um, I think you could argue that that the end of open admissions probably had an effect on enrollment in the level of academic qualifications that students bring to the college, so that students today are probably on the whole much better prepared. They have higher high school averages. More of them have probably taken AP exams, that kind of stuff, than was true back in, say, 1965, something like that. But it's hard to know. I mean, it's a smaller place, and that's a good thing. But you can also understand that it's maybe not so good from the standpoint of people who might have gotten a college degree but were prevented from doing so.
All right. Now this is going off of the CUNY system and talking about New York City in general
Yeah.
during the 1970s. You lived there during that time, right?
Yes.
Okay. There was a point where the borough president of Brooklyn said that the streets of Brooklyn are unsafe, and my professor for the class which I'm making this documentary for, he told me that he was 17 at the time, and he was gonna ride the subway by himself. So he went to a guy at the booth to buy the Metro card. And as he was entering the subway, the guy at the booth said, "This kid's gonna die," because it was that bad, the crime and
Yeah.
poverty during that time. What were your experiences of the social conditions during this time?
Well, I think that's right. I don't have any personal experience with crime. I was never mugged or robbed or anything like that. It's the city certainly felt less safe. I think the thing that was most obvious when the city was running out of money to do all kinds of things is the deteriorating infrastructure of the city. I can't give you an exact date, but I remember when people were talking about the Williamsburg Bridge falling down or the Brooklyn Bridge falling down because the city didn't have enough money to, to paint it or repair it on a regular basis. The city was a lot dirtier than it is now. It's not just crime that is a marker of a fiscal crisis like that. It's quality of life stuff all over the place. The police were so busy dealing with violent crime that they let a lot of other things, that are often called quality of life crimes, go by the board, so that you'd have all sorts of stuff happening in the city that nowadays the police wouldn't let take place simply because the circumstances have changed. I'm not making very much sense about that, but I mean, you get the idea that when cities run out of money, a lot changes, and I think we can begin even now to see to see some of that starting to happen when people are talking about cutting back on schools or cutting back on the police force or cutting back on sanitation or cutting back on repairing the infrastructure. If this gets any worse, we'll be back where we were in the 1970s.